Hello, everyone. Welcome into Inside LAFC podcast. We are live on LAFC YouTube, live on LAFC Facebook. We're in the midst of the Club World Cup. We welcome everyone in. I am Max Bretos, and we welcome the man you've been hearing during the Club World Cup for Turner Sports, Brian Dunseth. They're nestled in the epicenter of it all. How are you doing today, Dunny?
I'm fantastic, Tio Max. Good to be with you. It's been a while, and man, what a crazy tournament this has been. I think I go back to that halftime segment of you and I of LAFC Club America and the talk about the $10 million game, and we had this opportunity to predict what it was going to look like. Like, what's your most outlandish, credible prediction? And we both said Brazilian teams, I think, are going to shock a lot of people around the world, because this whole kind of like theoretical concept of like, well, I wonder if you took this team and you played it in this Champions League, or you played it against La Liga or Premier League. And I think with the way that the tournament has transformed from kind of these single elimination, maybe 7 days on the ground and try to find a result to continue to move on, versus what the group stages look like, we've seen some really phenomenal results. I think some results heard around the world, specific to Botafogo and Flamengo beating respectively PSG and Chelsea. We've seen some disappointment from some teams maybe we thought would do a little bit better. And I think most importantly, we've seen some incredible fan bases where there's kind of like this recreation of Bombonera or Maracanã or even Setawa with what we saw from Iwara Red Diamonds the other day in Seattle. For all the pomp and circumstances and all the predictive kind of negativity surrounding these tournaments, I think we've seen some really, really cool moments both on the field and inside the stands.
Oh, I can't wait. We haven't even got to the good part with the round of 16. So leave a comment about what you think about the Club World Cup. We'll talk about it at the end of this show. Mila coming in live. You like it because we are live. And then you get to watch this later if you can't watch the live. And Daniel just coming in. It's funny you should talk about the Brazilian team, because we're going to have a Brazilian team. We're going to have the best Brazilian team. We're going to have the best South American team, no matter what anyone tells you. Flamengo moves the needle. That game, the final group stage game, it'll be the final group stage game for the Club World Cup. LAFC, Flamengo, tomorrow night, 6 p.m. Pacific time. You can see it streaming on DAZN. So tune in there. DAZN is, if you don't have the DAZN app, just get it. The games are free.
Super easy.
Yeah. Watch it. We also encourage you to like and subscribe. Hit the thumb. Subscribe to our LAFC YouTube page and Facebook page. It helps us spread the word. We welcome fans from, if you're a Flamengo fan and you're curious about LAFC, you're in the right place. Bom dia, Mengão. Bom dia, Rio de Janeiro. It's about my extent of my Portuguese. It should be a lot better. But we welcome it. If you're a Flamengo fan, you come in. And this is huge, but we'll talk about that game here in a moment. And I know there's a malaise as we think about this LAFC tournament thus far and the Esperance result. And Daniel, you touch on that. Where does it worst performances? We don't really get in there. Look, there's good games. There's bad games. Daniel now following up. I should start saying hello. Thank you for coming in. And we're going to talk about Flamengo because this is a great opportunity. It's a competitive game. There's money on the line. There's prestige. There's history. And that game, again, there you see, 6 p.m. Pacific time. I cannot emphasize enough how massive this is to face Flamengo. Chelsea is Chelsea, but we just saw Flamengo knock the doors off of Chelsea in their game. And they're the first team to go through to the round of 16. They're probably going to win this group. So everything is in place for Flamengo there. And we'll talk about that game. I want to really touch about the black and girl tournament so far. And the Chelsea result, which even at 2-0, we took some pride in it. And maybe some of that was taken away after what we saw with Flamengo versus Chelsea, but I will stand by it. You know, LAFC were brave. The Esperance result, Daniel, was really disappointing. There's no doubt about it. To watch that game was frustrating. I was texting Brian. I was texting so many people. I go, come on, let's get after it. But, these games certainly happen. And they haven't scored a goal, and they've had their chances, and they haven't got a point in this tournament, and they are out. So, yeah, it was frustrating. I was miserable, as so many others have been for the rest of the day. And I get it, but we got to put that aside, and let's get ready for this game. But look, this hasn't gone well. And I think MLS, by and large, Inter Miami has gone through. Sounders are working to get something positive, but their tournament's going to end as well. Hasn't been great. But the LAFC perspective, I think folks were saying this could be the best bet. There's opportunity here. The bookmakers thought so, and now it's gone. So, yeah, that's disappointing. But this is still a chance where we get into this Club World Cup and you get to flex your muscles and you get to be in a tournament that every club in the world would love to be in, more so after watching it, because they see the prestige, they see the fans. So if you give it a grade, it wouldn't be a passing grade for LAFC. This is disappointing. There's no way to paint it. But that Esperance result, it's in the rearview mirror. I think LAFC will think about it many times in the future. A lot of it can be wiped away if they perform and come out the best way they do tomorrow. But on its front, Dunny, your thoughts about game 1 to game 2, how LAFC have looked?
Yeah, we came on right after the first match against Chelsea, and we were thinking about moments, and we were thinking about mistakes, and we were thinking about Pedro Neto and Denny Bouanga changing kind of the way that the game is. And that was a byproduct of Reece James going off at halftime and some man management of Enzo Maresca and his fitness levels and bringing in Malo Gusto. And then right until the end, I think it was the final 5 minutes of the match, 10 minutes of the match, when Liam Delap got to the end line, clipped the ball, and Timothy Tillman was enabled to be on the right side as opposed to the backside of Enzo Fernandez. I think we were extremely positive heading into the Esperance game, knowing that it's going to be in Nashville. The Tunisian fans were extraordinary. There's so many different videos of them marching up and down Main Street and Broadway and just showing their passion. And I think Esperance did what we wanted LAFC to do, which was capture the imagination with the 3 points and the style and the identity and the substance and everything that is how we describe LAFC. But in a similar manner to these two matches, Max, it really comes down to moments. And players that we were so used to being ruthless and cunning and the ability to punish the mistakes and find the back of the net. Unfortunately, LAFC offensively came up dry in the 2 most important games of this tournament, because those 2 games set the tone and gave you, quite frankly, the opportunity to move on. So now you're playing for pride. But you're playing for pride at Camping World Stadium, which is going to be a cauldron of Flamengo fans. And if it's anywhere close to what we saw at Lincoln Financial Field the other afternoon, it's going to feel like Maracanã. The sounds and the passion and even the frustration from the referees, because the black and red balloons were making their way onto the field of play over the course of 90 minutes. This is a really, really, really good team, and they're looking to make a statement. And I think it shouldn't be lost on anybody that as much as players are playing for the crest and playing for the pride of representing their respective clubs and fan bases and leagues around the world, they're also, quite frankly, looking at this as an opportunity to brand themselves individually, to look for an opportunity to potentially take that next jump. And in particular, when you talk about Botafogo, Felipe Luis and what he's done, there was a pride factor in that second half, considering from his playing days, he only had played 15 minutes in that one season that he had left Atletico Madrid, gone to Chelsea, and then returned to Atletico Madrid. So now you have one of the brightest managers in the game, and Felipe Luis, who's widely considered from a lot of people that next kind of group of managers that are going to be considered to be the Brazilian national team managers. And in the short term, you've got some players that are dynamic and difference makers, and I think have done a good job in showing the world that Brazilian football, although not big and strong and fast and like all these crazy profiles we talk about, whether it be a Borussia Dortmund or it be a Real Madrid, that if you don't talk about the way they defend, the way they fight, the way they have this kind of grittiness and attitude, but controlled temperament, and then the technical ability on top of that, you got this mix of like old established guys that are maybe making their way back to Brazil to finish out their career, and kind of this extra layer of a generation that maybe hasn't been identified at 15, 16, 17 to go immediately to Europe, whether it's Shakhtar Donetsk or Benfica or Porto or even now Chelsea or Real Madrid. So some really, really good players, so much so that I had a couple conversations with some people that were interested in my perspective about the availability of some of these players in Major League Soccer. So it's been an interesting thing. And I think the disappointment for Steve Cherundolo, his group, his assistants, and this group of players is it was an opportunity that they weren't able to capitalize on. So ultimately and egotistically, how do you have that short turnaround time? How do you start thinking about your best possible 11 that's going to be available? And how can you play for pride and play for the crest, understanding that you are an important representative of Major League Soccer? And as I make my point, I'm going to open up this curtain because I feel like I'm in a den right now that just keeps darker and darker.
You got to do what you got to. There he goes. He's not leaving, but we can see he is joining us from the epicenter in Atlanta, where they're covering all this World Cup. And Craig joining in about the Club World Cup. We're going to have a conversation about the Club World Cup. Have your questions about here. Katie, I saw that a lot of angry LAFC fans. Anger should not be disappointment, frustration. Yes. LAFC, laid an egg. And look, there's a lot of teams like Esperance, Mamelodi Sundowns of the township in Pretoria. They didn't win a game, but they come out 4-3. Ulsan had a result at their fingertips. It slipped away.
What about Uwara?
Yes.
Uwara was 2 minutes away from getting a win and then a draw against Inter, which would have been, you talk about panic time for Kivu. Like, they threw everything they could. I mean, it's been some weird, crazy results that I don't think anybody was prepared for.
Inter Miami had their moment. Seattle had their moment against Botafogo. And these are all there. LAFC hasn't had it, but they still have a chance. So we can be frustrated. We can't be angry because, as I pointed out, LAFC are one of 32 teams that got an invite that are here to this tournament. And whether they earned it directly, they didn't. They got a second shot at it and they went through. Guess Club America is watching this. And I see these quotes go, Leon should be there. Club America. Well, they're not. The Galaxy are not. Portland Timbers are not. Liverpool's not. Manchester United, Barcelona, they're not here. LAFC is here. And you don't know when you get back here again. So take advantage of it. So I see people are upset. You can be upset. You can't be angry because this club has given you this. And because of what happened to Esperance, don't turn away now. Enjoy tomorrow. I mean, it might get bad. It might, but it might not. And maybe like so many other teams, LAFC has that moment. So I put that out there because I know I've seen that there and we all dealt with the malaise, but as Dunny opened the curtain, we turned the page. We moved forward. We've moved forward. Leave your comments, questions about Flamengo. If you're joining from Flamengo, like and subscribe to the channel. That's how we spread the word. We appreciate you joining us every Monday, 12:30 on LAFC YouTube and Facebook. Let's get to know Flamengo a little bit. And you mentioned earlier that, we said the South American teams are going to do well. And I'm shocked that it was a surprise to so many people because I think it was, you knew that this was going to happen. I think what we didn't expect was how the European teams, this one image of the Borussia Dortmund team sitting there in the first half in air conditioning because it was too hot in Cincinnati, or Jude Bellingham complaining about the conditions or this and that. And I'm like, the European teams, I think they'll adjust, but maybe they were taken by surprise. And the Brazilian teams and River Plate, maybe Boca to a lesser degree, have taken advantage of that. Certainly the South American teams and a few others like Inter Miami, the African teams as we listed them. So, but most of the teams at the end are going to be South American. The majority are going to be European in a round of 16. But Flamengo is truly, look at the numbers they generate. This is a team that has 50 million registered fans in Brazil and everywhere in the world. This is a club that is Brazilian, but what I love about them, Dunny, is they have so many nationalities. They have a couple of Uruguayans, they have an Argentine goalkeeper, they have a Chilean midfielder, they have an Ecuadorian forward who's excellent. This is a South American team. This is a team that if they were in the Premier League would finish in the top 10. Yeah. They're just super talented. So as much as people got excited for Chelsea, I want people to get excited for Flamengo. And what you said earlier, what is it going to be? 50,000 fans, maybe more, I think, in Orlando. So LAFC needs all your support because they're going to be heading into the Lions' Den. So for that, it's scary. But man, this is a competitive game, and Flamengo's going to be into it because I think they're going to win the group. But if you win these games, you get more money. So they're not going to lay down here. They have depth, but they're not going to lay down.
Yeah, I mean, their depth. Felipe Luis got all the substitutions right, and in particular, the 20-year-old Wallachian came in on one side. You had Varela when Wesley went down on that right-hand side. You had Enrique come in, and he was fantastic. He got the goal. I mean, you talk about immediacy of reaction. Of course, Nicholas Jackson had no reason to make that challenge. It was so silly that got him sent off with the red card just a few minutes after replacing Liam Delap. And so the game kind of got away from Chelsea. But to your point, I think it's important to point out there's kind of these like minuscule conversations within this tournament. A lot of it has to do with Brazilian football. You think about the finances. This is something I was trying to bring up with Kev Egan during the broadcast, is that, you think about some of these tournaments in Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericana and what the bag looks like as they move on deeper and deeper into the tournament. But I think it was, and I don't know if I have the number in front of me, I think it was the last game, Flamengo's total value of their roster was somewhere like around 75 million. So nothing like crazy.
No.
But then when you compare and contrast,
far off of that.
yeah, and then you compare and contrast the 2 billion that's been rolling over since Todd Bowley and Clear Lake had invested into Chelsea Football Club. They're going about it different ways. So not only is it pride of like kind of the CONMEBOL region and Copa Libertadores and Copa Sudamericana, but it's also the understanding that financially, as investment continues to start to ramp up more and more from all of these crazy investment arms and individual investors we're seeing around world football, that these teams understand, the boards understand how important it is to win and maximize points and maximize the financials that are available, because some of these clubs are in dire straits, and the purses of these tournaments aren't as great as they are in moments like this. So to your point, listen, I don't think it should be lost on anybody that performance, prideful performance is really, really important for LAFC, but also understanding that, very quietly, this could be the biggest challenge of the 3 games, which was something that you and I were predictive of, that Chelsea sets the tone. Esperance is the need for 3 points, the mandatory if you try to advance out of the group stage. But then if you get in this final game, you knew that you were up for probably or arguably the biggest challenge, because Flamengo's when we talk about CONMEBOL teams, similarly to what we talked about for the United States last summer heading into Copa America, when you play Colombia, when you play Brazil, when you play Uruguay, even when you play Bolivia, there's this institutional understanding that there's a battle that's being waged between the physical side and the technical side. And for a team like Flamengo, they'll know how to beat you with skill and precision and moving off the ball and these creative moments. But within that context, there's a fist fight that you have to win. And obviously that's, I'm being outrageous with the description, but there's an understanding of how to like redline the physicality, manipulate the referee and manipulate the opponent, but still stay in control and not be naive in those moments, be mature when you could figure out how to get stuck in and tackle and say and really send a message. It also is going to be interesting to see. We've seen referees really, really tight with the way that they're calling games and immediately challenges being shown yellow. And we've seen some uncompromising, very forgiving referees that aren't even and by the way, oddly, in this bigger conversation is this kind of line where the intervention of VAR, are they overstepping their bounds or are they not stepping in when necessary? Because the idea of clear and obvious is being applied very, very differently. Not all federations exact that the exact same way. So there's so many different variables at play, but ultimately, Flamengo is going to be a team that's going to cause, I think, more challenges to LAFC than either what Esperance or Chelsea did in that opening match.
Yikes.
No, but I think that's a good thing, because that continues to bleed the experience in necessary, because you can come out of this tournament and be really disappointed collectively with the way it ended. But in those moments, and I know it's kind of predictive, hopeful down the line, but if there was reference points of Steve or his coaching staff to say, this was the game we won because we got our tails handed to us. Well, be quiet. But this is the game we won in the playoffs, or this is the game that we won in this tournament, in this knockout round, and we were able to utilize all of the negative situations and learning lessons that we had at FIFA Club World Cup. I think there's a weird benefit that could be used down the line, but obviously that's somewhere down the line.
This is Inside LAFC Podcast. Like and subscribe our channel on YouTube and Facebook. It helps us get the word out. Answer some of the questions. Joe on Facebook, LAFC is giving a disappointing performance. To be honest, it is. I mean, there's no way to sugarcoat it. Esperance was brutal. And, Esperance probably should have had that game tucked away even before the penalty by Denny Bouanga, which he missed. And if he makes that, it's 1-1. And this whole conversation's completely different. The margins are so fine. And the officiating, what you talked about, Dunny. Flamengo beats Chelsea. I thought it was a penalty by a CONCACAF referee to not give it to Enzo Fernandez. I thought it was a penalty. He didn't give it to him. On the end line. Yeah. Yeah. And it would have been 2-0 Chelsea. And that game's probably over. And this group is a lot different. And I think that would keep LAFC in it. And by the way, when Flamengo beat Chelsea, I don't know how much that took the wind out of the sails of LAFC, because even if they beat Esperance, they would have had to beat Flamengo to advance. So there's all that at play. Jose Reyes mentioning about the refereeing in the Monterrey Real River Plate game, which was very good. I thought so. Yeah, there's some good officiating, but the interpretation is very different. And yes, Joe, the Brazilian teams have got so much skills. And I love the fact that we do have Flamengo. What if we were playing Porto, which is a good European team, or Benfica, or Inter Milan, it would have been great. But this is not Flamengo. This is all of Brazil is watching it. You've seen these watch parties in Rio and Sao Paulo and everywhere where they're completely locked in. This is a chance for LAFC to get a lot of positivity, a lot of eyeballs, a lot of clout in the world stage. You still can take advantage of this Club World Cup with this result. So let's talk a bit about the approach. How will LAFC look? And they've had some bad cards dealt their way. Obviously, Nate Ordaz, we haven't got an update. I can't expect he will play. Usually concussions or anything in that protocol is going to keep you out at least a week. And that Chelsea game was exactly a week away. The Esperance game was on Friday, so you're looking at 3-day gap. So there has to be some turnover for LAFC, who've been playing in the heat and humidity, a thin roster compared to Flamengo. I mean, I was looking at the Flamengo roster. They have Alexandro, who can't get off the bench. And that guy played 300 games for Juventus and countless games for Brazil. They are just deep for days. So they'll be able to handle the rotation better than LAFC. That's just the way it is. And that is a big edge across the board. The crowd, everything is in Flamengo's favor, which I think, to what you said, Dunny, is an exciting approach for LAFC, because this is going to be a huge showpiece. You're going to turn on that game. You're going to see this crowd. And as an LAFC fan, you should take a lot of pride, because they got this result. They got the honor to come into this competition. And now this is what we were hoping for. So don't turn away from this team. Enjoy that game and give them your support, because all the other teams, as you've seen, it's what's made the Club World Cup so special, the support from these teams, which in many ways is bigger than the national team support.
Hey, Max, really quick, side note, how cool is it going to be for Igor Jesus to play against his former club?
Yeah, it's
product of Flamengo coming over, 22 years of age, and getting to go up against Polgar in the middle and battle. And, from a pride standpoint, if there was ever a guy inside your locker room, and I know the age isn't the same as some of the established veterans coming over from Europe, but if you can lean into and have the insight, okay, culturally, this is how we play, this is what we think about, this is the non-negotiables, this will be our trending patterns of play, this is how they'll think, and kind of give you that insight, it's incredibly important. And obviously the challenge is what the challenge is. But again, I think when we talk about pride of performance, I think at the end of the day, any of these teams in Major League Soccer that are falling short for one reason or another, whether it's group of death, group of hard, or something that separates them, like a Lionel Messi free kick, at the end of the day, there's we do this thing where we look at the game and we judge these athletes based on the 90 minutes between the white lines, and we take in no account what's happening in their personal life, because a lot of us don't care. We just want to see our players perform at a level that's acceptable. And I think in games like this, what you want to see is, however you define the crest of LAFC, you want to see the eyeball test. You want to see the visual markers and those boxes checked, that even if you're overpowered, even if the opponent is deemed better than you, at the end of it, like that little bit of fire, that little bit of grit, that little bit of intensity within context and mature enough to handle, not doing something stupid to leave your team in a situation where you're playing a man down. But whatever that looks like, I'd be intrigued to hear from the listeners or from the viewers, like, what are those non-negotiables that you need to see? Because it's easy to say, like, we need 3 points. We need to win. We need to, at the end of the 90 minutes, it's got to be undeniably a win. Well, there's certain challenges that you can't just say that. It's not a broad stroke. So I think for me, I want to see, obviously competing is the bare minimum, right? But at the same time, I would love to see LAFC earn the right to play in a moment where the press is going to be on, the humidity and the heat's going to be, the crowd, the pressure of the moment. I would love to see LAFC almost forget whatever else is happening, dumb it down to its most simplest form. Let's get out and play. Like, let's get our rhythm. Like, let's find our.
They're capable of that, man. They're capable.
100% they are, and it's weird because I have a different look at this, right? Because I'm part of like the analytical side for the broadcast, but then I'm also the one that has so much respect for what this club has done in such a short amount of time, and I think that gets lost in like the grit of social media and everything that's happening and the anger about results. And I understand all that. I'm not naive to any of that. But I do think it's important sometimes to just acknowledge that. God, my stupid watch. That sometimes I think it's really important just to dumb it down to its simplest form. And like when we're kids out on the playground, or we go into our very first match, or the very first time we get a chance to play at a high level, what do you want to see? Self-belief, confidence, competitiveness, the understanding that, yeah, there's going to be moments where you're going to suffer. And then there's going to be some moments where you got a little bit of swagger, you got a little confidence. And that's what I'm hoping to see over the course of 90 minutes.
Very well said. And I think that's very capable for LAFC here in Inside LAFC podcast. Ruben and Craig, I want to talk about that Steve Cherundolo conversation you're having. I think it's very interesting. But this LAFC situation now as they approach Flamengo, we know everyone can play better. As to how they look, Hugo Lloris is going to be tough to break, because I think we saw that against Esperance. So I'm excited about having him in the back. Maybe there'll be a little bit of rotation alongside. Maybe it could be Marlon instead of Eddie Segura. Maybe they play a back three. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility. I think the fullbacks remain the same. The midfield remains the same. You want to see a big game from Timothy Tillman, which he's capable of. Igor Jesus is going to be inspired, as you pointed out. Denny Bouanga is going to be inspired. He hasn't had a good tournament. He could have 2 goals in this tournament, which puts him in elite company. He doesn't. I know that. And I've seen a lot of the comments about Danny and the very negative approach, because this is the guy who has always picked us up and delivered, as he did against Club America. Club America, as we've seen with Monterrey, if they were in this tournament, would be putting fear in team. They have a huge roster. They have a capability of advancing in this competition, but they're not in it because of LAFC. Steve Cherundolo has put together a master plan on many occasions. Granted, it's a short amount and a bit of the unknown, which that cuts both ways, because Flamengo is going to approach this with a team they don't know much about. And as much as I like Felipe Luis, and a great player, I mean, he's still just getting started in his coaching career. So we'll see.
He's excellent, though, Maxi.
He is excellent. And I think he's going to be a rock star, but he's still, wet behind the ears and that. So I like Ruben. Maybe Igor will get some intel. I think we're going to see a better Denny. I think we'll see a good Igor Jesus. I think we'll see a better Timothy Tillman.
You think Dil Rosen will get the chance? I think
that's possible. I hope it's David Martinez, but it's just, he's still a young player, and you see it get up and down, and he's going to play a role in here, whether it's the starting role. I don't know. I would love to see him out there. I'd love to see him play and start, because it means he's put the work in, but I don't know. And Dil Rosen's still so new to the club.
Yeah, I would say the one thing with David Martinez is that there's no doubt that he's an incredibly talented kid. But within the structure, there's expectations and non-negotiables. And I think that's the time where we're looking at him. And it's hard for us from the outside looking in to understand with game model and like those non-negotiables of what's necessary. Because a lot of times we just say, We just let attacking players be attacking players. And the rest of us, donkeys in the back, will just defend and keep the game in front of us. But that's not the modern game anymore, or very rarely that's the modern game. And I think it's important to understand that, having watched Diego Luna and the whole evolution at Real Salt Lake, when he got there, it wasn't for a lack of talent, similar to David Martinez. It was for an understanding of the workload off the ball that was necessary to protect the team, give him the right foundation, and then allow him to shine, because then everybody else is up higher. They're more congested. There's more support. There's more movement off the ball. And I think that's one thing when we talk about young, extremely talented players, that in the modern game, specific to Major League Soccer, there's not a lot of freebies. And I think as I watch Martinez, I see what a phenomenally talented young player he is. But I also can see at times the frustration of the coaching staff trying to make sure he's doing the little things that's expected for him to play the role that he wants to play on the offensive end of the ball.
This is Inside LAFC podcast live on LAFC YouTube and Facebook. Like our video, subscribe to the channel to help us get the word around. Jose saying, I would love LAFC to have at least one goal in the Club World Cup. I think that's fair, and I think they can attain it. Hopefully they could get a little bit more. I want to ask this question. Craig asked it. Genuine question about Steve Cherundolo, taking into account that he is working his notice. What is the benefit to LAFC delaying changing coaches before end of season? Now the involvement in the Club World Cup is over. Ruben responding, where will we find a coach with Steve's accomplishments or more want to come for 6 months, or perhaps they already have their guy and their contract restricts getting them sooner? All very interesting. I will say this about, and I don't know if it's David's fault or the coaching, whatever. They've done a great job developing Nate. It hasn't happened for David. We've seen the frustration in his development. Not everyone hits. Again, I don't know where that lies. It could go either way. But we've seen it unfold before our eyes. Now let's talk about Steve Cherundolo. A lot of people are saying this is the time for him to jump because he could go to a year. But I just go back. If that happened to the comment from Ruben about bringing somebody in, I agree. You can't really do that. And the only thing possible is maybe you have an assistant take over. But why would Steve be a lame duck, especially since he has achieved so much for this club? Getting them here, and now, as he said, MLS is the priority, trying to get them back to this Club World Cup over this next cycle and getting this team back into an MLS Cup. Steve's a great coach, and I've said this so many times, you're going to miss him when he's gone, because you could be frustrated with LAFC's performance in the Club World Cup. But there are 27 MLS teams. There are 18 Premier League teams. There's thousands of clubs that would love to be in here. They are one of 32. And that is Steve Cherundolo's handiwork. I don't think he's going anywhere. I think he wants to go and finish this and then assess that. And I don't know anything about this, but they are definitely fielding calls and preparing for next season too, because that's what professional teams do, Dunny.
Yeah, I think it's wild that conversation even has any legs, to be quite honest with you. I guess I just see it in a completely different realm, because I would assume from Steve's position, you finish strong, you lift another MLS Cup trophy, and understanding that red winter's right around the corner for Bundesliga managers during that break to get fired. At the end of 2025, he sets himself up either for a nice little rest mentally, or he walks right into whatever job that is walking across the table. I can tell you this, I'm around a lot of intelligent former players in this little bullpen we have out here at Turner. And the amount of conversations surrounding LAFC and the way that these former players and current coaches, and the way that the guys that are coming over from DAZN from Europe, the way that the club is viewed, it's like, I don't even know how to verbalize it. It's so incredibly positive. But again, I understand it's about results on the field, and I understand a passionate fan base. But I would just, to your point, remind people to be careful what you wish for, because the grass is not always greener on the other side. And when you do get on the other side of that fence, sometimes you step into something you weren't expecting to step into. So I don't think it's lost on anybody from the outside looking in that John Thorrington and the decision makers from LAFC have a big decision to make. But I'm old enough to remember that was a similar conversation with Bob Bradley. And the surprise when John Thorrington turned to Steve Cherundolo at that stage of his coaching career, being so fresh to the game, and how quickly you could hear Chiellini or Bale or Vela talk about his leadership and the technical side and the tactical side and what that all meant, and the amount of times that LAFC has competed for a trophy. So I guess I must look at it from a different lens, but without a shadow of a doubt, I don't think I think there's going to be plenty of calls that this club is going to field for interest of high-level managers. And I would assume, based on the success that LAFC has had and the ability to go out and not only develop, identify, have proof of concept of sale and development, and then continue to bring in players because you're in Los Angeles, in one of the best stadiums in Major League Soccer with an unbelievable training facility, that there are so many boxes that have been checked that people aren't thinking about, that leads to some serious conversations with some serious heavyweights in the coaching world.
That's Brian Dunseth. Beautifully said. Ruben, hashtag preach for that take. If it was up to me, I would find a way to keep Steve here. 7, if you include the America, 7 finals, we can call that a final, in 3.5 years. Nobody's doing that anywhere. So it's truly a remarkable achievement. And yes, the grass is not always greener. Make sure you like and subscribe. I see the comments rolling in, and Ruben also agreeing with David and David Hernandez sloppy about the Esperance game. We have to realize this is 90 minutes. It was bad.
The players know, Max. Listen, as much as we want to talk about managers, we talk about referees, we talk about opponents, there's not anybody inside of that locker room that doesn't understand that when they go back and they close their eyes and they put their head on the pillow, that they'll be frustrated because they know that in these moments, we can describe them as sloppy, we can describe them as unlucky, we can talk about players that haven't hit the highs of the performances that we expected, maybe a couple guys that played better than we thought they were going to play. At the end of the day, we sometimes do a disservice with not acknowledging that despite these gargantuan differences in certain sectors of the game, that these guys are prideful animals, man. They didn't get here without pride. It's not about money. It's not about cars. It's not about any of that stuff. It's about me versus you, mano a mano. Like I'm going to take everything you got today. And I think those are the things that we want to see when I talk about those eyeball test moments. We want to see that you care, that you compete. And if, and right now, listen, they're going to suffer in moments, but I think it's going to be interesting to see how do they manufacture moments that changes momentum, that gives them a chance to win games. And we've seen them do it time and time again, whether we're talking about Major League Soccer, we're talking about Leagues Cup, we're talking about Campeones de Campeones, we're talking about Champions Cup, all of these moments. How can they recreate that in a moment where, it's going to be really difficult, the circumstances, and a Flamengo side, by the way, that wants to end up top of the table, that wants to have the pomp and circumstance.
Some more coin.
And some more coin. So, I think all of those are really important. And by the way, maybe the byproduct of all of this is the understanding what the club needs, on the field, inside the locker room, the decisions that are made.
And they will pursue that.
Yeah, with Under, with Dilrosun coming in, Under going out, they've never stood pat ever. And it's been seasons of constant change. I mean, I've said to you, even if you go back to the MLS Cup final in Columbus a couple of years ago, the following season, the very first game, there were 5 starters no longer on the roster and 2 substitutes no longer on the roster. My Cal State Fullerton math, or pass or fail, isn't great, but that's 7 guys that were part of your MLS Cup final performance. So I think, when we talk about pennies in the bank, who's got them, you have to believe that LAFC understands not what they are, but more importantly, what they're not. And I think those are some of the things that, in moments like this, it almost clarifies very clearly what you need going forward. And maybe bigger picture, when we talk about Major League Soccer, that'll be a great thing for this club moving forward.
This is Inside LAFC podcast, live on LAFC YouTube and Facebook every Monday. Like and subscribe our channels here. Zach, Max, globally speaking, 3 weeks ago, our Club Zenith, this Friday, our Club Basement. We haven't hit a basement, man. That was a bad game, but we have a game against the biggest team in the Americas tomorrow, competitive, with money and prestige on the line. So This club is not, if it, maybe it is the basement, but that just shows the standard that we have set. And I hope we're picking some spirits up. Look, tomorrow it could be bad, and we're like, don't turn your back on this team. Has given you so many memories, including this past week, and enjoy tomorrow. This may be my favorite comment we have received, and it'll lead to our next subject. I hope you're still on the channel, Talia. Hi, we have enjoyed having the team here at Mercer. We have enjoyed having a soccer team we can be proud of here in Macon, Georgia. That is where the team is based. And I want to talk about what lies ahead for LAFC, because this team's been away from their families and their friends, from LA to Macon, Georgia. I've been to Macon. It's a lot different than LA. It's a lovely place, great people, but it's a lot different if you're not familiar. So, and it's summertime in Macon, which, a lot of people, that part of the world, it's hot. What lies ahead for LAFC? They'll play Flamengo. They have Vancouver on the weekend to get back into MLS, which is all very important. I just wanted to ask. And they build, and the back end of the schedule is going to be a grind. They're going to have so many games to make up. So get ready.
Yeah,
LAFC needs their support, but LAFC is going to come out of this tournament hoping to get back. And having that, I feel like something's going to come out of this Flamengo game where there's going to be a lot of handshakes and go, let's make some sort of relationships. I want MLS and Brazil to kind of, not South America. I want Brazil. I don't want Argentina, Uruguay, and Ecuador. All due respect. I want Brazil and MLS and Liga MX one day. So I think something comes out of this. Who knows what happened with Chelsea? I spoke to Giorgio Chiellini, and we talk about it. He goes, this is real, these relationships. Everyone's in the United States and soaking it in. And to get to Zach's comment, there is no basement when LAFC is in this tournament. Everyone else is watching going, I wish I was there. I wish LAFC is here. So how do we take away from this experience? We will talk more about it next week, but just regardless of what happens tomorrow and LAFC getting back into MLS, how does that look like?
Yeah, listen, I think we've touched on it, right? We want to see a prideful performance, but with that understanding that they are mathematically eliminated from this group stage and from this tournament, they should go out with no fear. There should be the intensity of this approach should be very prideful, like stepping in and understanding, like, let's play our game, let's play our style. And on the backside of this, it's the understanding that, what is it, Vancouver, away at Austin, Colorado, FC Dallas, all those rescheduled games, and then was it Minnesota? You still got the LA Galaxy.
September too. That's rescheduled. Yeah. It's going to be Leagues Cup.
And then you're right into what this looks like for All-Star game and a little bit of break. And so no rest for the weary, and understanding that it's not necessarily a refresh, but I think, and here's a complexity, because I had this conversation with multiple managers last year. The idea of going out to the international market and strengthening the summer seems like a great one. But it also sometimes can go horrifically sideways, because you bring in these monster players with these monster mentalities and personalities, and sometimes it doesn't mesh well with the locker room, and things can go sideways. So you kind of create this culture and this atmosphere and these non-negotiables, and sometimes you bring these guys in and it doesn't work. And we've seen that, and there's a couple reference points that we can point to where things go sideways. And you and I were watching Real Salt Lake, everything fall apart last year, based on some outgoing moves and some incoming moves. So the challenge is, with games in hand, though we are kind of like theoretically look at it, Max, all the time. We say, well, they've got 2 games in hand, so that's 6 points. That's not 6 points until you got, the win at the end of those 90 minutes. So there will be a rhythm to it, and LAFC will be understanding of what it takes to be in that rhythm of multiple games per week, sometimes with travel, sometimes with rest. God, this stupid watch. But ultimately,
got a very kind voice, though.
Yeah, I don't know why she decides to jump into my conversations. But ultimately, this is what's going to be interesting. I think as the season goes on, I love the theory of what the potential of lesser known commodities on the bench looks like, and who could come in at the end of the season or in the run up to the end of the season and all of a sudden shock everybody. And those performances, whether impact off the bench and changing the course of a match, or the solidity of having somebody in the starting 11 and wondering yourself, God, he's playing a lot of minutes, a lot of games, he's starting a lot of matches. How does that all become beneficial for what is kind of just the wild, wild west of Major League Soccer during the summer.
Inside LAFC podcast. Jay, I know Max, he says it's time for change. Well, change is coming, man. It's coming, and maybe it is. But again, we say careful what you wish for. LAFC is making a lot of ground on the world stage because they are here. Full stop. Sir Crispy, serious for the black and gold, Dunny. So she's bringing. And I want to say Craig did want to point out that he stood on behalf of Steve staying. So he just started that conversation. So point taken. Mok Woon Moon, welcome. Hello. Good to see you. Players, a lot of people wanted LAFC to sign all these players because they were in the Club World Cup. No one really did that. And I was looking at Pachuca, who did, and it backfired. They had Palavecino, and those guys didn't do anything. It's hard to bring in a player and say, okay, actually, LAFC brought in Dilrosun. So we have that. But clubs didn't go out and bring in, for lack of a better word, a mercenary for this tournament. It's just not feasible. So there you have it. Let's talk about the Club World Cup. A lot of people were critical. They didn't want to tune in. Is it here to stay? Quickly, we're going to wrap things up. If you have a comment about the Club World Cup, drop it on there, and we will we'll share it to me, and I'll let you get the final word here, Dunny. It is told me, I predict the Club World Cup, while it won't be the World Cup, it's going to close a lot of ground. Because what I've seen from supporters is there is a connection to your club that is so much stronger than your connection to your national team. I know that sounds crazy, but your connection to your club, as I do, if all of you do, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days a week for LAFC, for Wydad, for Urawa, for Juventus. It's a constant. And your relationships with those who share your club are stronger than your national team. So for people who thought this was a gimmick, you're crazy. It is here to stay. We've seen it not just from the South American, the images from Urawa and Wydad and Ulsan, they're all there embedded. Yeah. And thousands of clubs want to get into it. It's going to be back. I heard someone comment about Brazil wants to host it, or whoever. It's going to be stronger. It's going to be in Brazil one year. It's going to be in Europe. It's going to be in the Middle East. FIFA took a risk on this. They bankrolled it, and it's been fantastic. And we've the number one thing about it that's been great is the supporters, the cultural exchange, and what's happening. It has been tremendous. I can't wait for 4 years. So I'm actually very excited. I'm actually going to be joining Dunny in Atlanta to call a Club World Cup game, and that is a personal and professional thrill. So Ruben saying Club World Cup is here to stay. What has stood out to you? And just a reset for the UEFA teams. They go, we'll have our Champions League, but if you can't beat the rest of the world, the Champions League loses its power. You've got to be able to lift it here.
Yeah, I think first and foremost is we got to understand that not just a format change to going to a group and creating more of a tournament, but it's funny listening to all of these other clubs at the end of their season complaining about the fatigue when in the reality for previous FIFA Club World Cups, Major League Soccer teams, seasons were over because usually this was a December or a February FIFA Club World Cup. So it's funny how, the tide switches. Similarly to LAFC Club America game where America was coming off the Clausura final and LAFC is right in the prime of their season. So there's never a perfect time in any of this. It's a dry run, and we've listened to managers, and Enzo Maresca was talking about the heat, and I saw Jude Bellingham talking about the field and the surface. These are all realities that we deal with every single day here in the United States. Where the heat and humidity of the South, the altitude of places like Denver or Salt Lake City, or kind of whatever, if you're on the East Coast, the West Coast, up in Seattle, there's so many different variables because this country's so big. The thing that I love about this, is that it took away a majority of the negativity that we saw in the buildup to this tournament online. Are there still issues? Yeah, I think people are trying to wrap their heads around the coordinated kickoff times, which coincide with having standalone games. That's really been the idea of, having an 11 o'clock game to a 3 o'clock game to a 6 o'clock game to a 9 o'clock game. These are the opportunities where every game is standalone, so we can kind of take all of this in. In the knockout rounds, it'll be a little bit more interesting because you'll have games kicked off at the same time, kind of like we're seeing right now out in LA with Botafogo and Atleti, and then PSG in Seattle up at Lumen Field. But I think it's been brilliant, and I have a tough time thinking that Infantino would really want to take this away from the United States, because obviously they want to cash in on credit cards and being in the United States and being able to have these major cities. But a lot of us are, again, we think FIFA Club World Cup and then, well, the Gold Cup. And then like, there's too much soccer. And like, there's never been a better time to consume this type of amount of soccer. So I think at the end of the day, we all understand that it's something that's been brand new. But I think it's naive not to suggest that this tournament's not picking up steam. And once it gets to the semifinals at MetLife with 2 standalone semifinal days and then a final at the weekend, the momentum and the eyeballs in this tournament, as much as people want to deflect from what this is or what this isn't, I think is going to be truly, truly massive. And by the way, to your point about the genetic DNA of loyalty to our club, sometimes it really, really hurts. And other times it's euphoric with the magic. And
you got to suffer, man. You got to suffer.
And just to see the passion of the fans from around the world representing their clubs, and the passion of the fans here in the United States getting the opportunity to see their clubs up close and personal. This isn't like a friendly cash grab, even though we want to say it's a cash grab. This isn't like one of those games where, you know, it's like Manchester United against Barcelona and stupid watch.
She loves black and gold, Siri.
Yeah, and then, you know, you've got a couple of starting kids in the starting 11, and in the second half, it's a bunch of youth players. The intensity of this game. I was with Juan Pablo Angel and Luis in the studio, and we were like, dude, this is the 85th minute. It's like 110 degrees, and these guys are killing each other for the opportunity of the 3 points. So is there some negatives? Yeah, but I think the positives are outweighing the negatives, and I think this is just the beginning, you know, specific to the next summer and starting to think beyond of what this tournament can mean and how much more buy-in there will be after this.
Brilliant. I think it's a good place to leave it. Enjoy the games today. Enjoy the game tomorrow. Our friend Michael reaching in, as Max predicted, this competition has been about the CONMEBOL teams. Dunny said that too. Standing up and being counted. Botafogo and Atletico. Tune into the game when we're done here. Ruben, if we win tomorrow, it will be a cash grab, $3 million to be exact. I don't know if that's accurate, but I'll go. Talia was still on there. Thanks for saying that. Craig, I'm Scottish. My country and World Cups don't get on. There is a limit to how many teams from one country can make it out of UEFA. So if Red Bull Salzburg made it, why can't Celtic? I'm telling you, man.
Or Rangers.
Yeah. MG, LAFC is disappointing. Yeah, but we get another chance tomorrow when no one else does. We need your support. Support the team tomorrow from wherever you are. It's a big deal. Dunny, keep up the good work. I'll see you very soon, my friend.
I'll see you tomorrow night, my man. Can't wait.
All right. That brings an end. A nice, juicy show here today. Make sure you tune into our YouTube channel. Check out Black and Gold Insider for great interviews with the members of the Black and Gold. Check out LAFC Weekly on Fox 11 Plus and LAFC Encore. We have so much programming for you. We will see you again next Monday live here at 12:30.